Aoyama is a widow working at a film production company. Having lost his wife 7 years prior, Aoyama has never quite fully moved on, but at the behest of those around him, he is encouraged to stage an audition to find a new life partner, under the guise of the audition being for a yet-to-be funded production. However, when he meets Asami through this process, an enigmatic, peculiar young woman whose statement regarding her agent representation and current employment doesn't add up, Aoyama is drawn deeply and speedily into a relationship that is stranger than he would ever expect. This is Takashi Miike's cult film Audition, widely acknowledged as an influential contribution to the subgenre of Japanese horror, J-horror, and yet Audition avoids many of the cliches and tropes expected of horror films, misleading the audience by teasing multiple genre conventions drastically unexpected within conventional horror, and providing commentary on the toxicity of society's pressure to be romantically involved with another person, a common pressure placed on people that encourages the behaviour of rushing into relationships that could be potentially unhealthy. During its earliest scenes, Audition is not reminiscent of a horror film, but more reminiscent of a melodrama, so melodramatic that it might even verge on soapy telenovela. A mother dies in her hospital bed, accompanied by gentle sentimental music, establishing the film's narrative early on as one rooted in tragedy. The reason why Aoyama is initially so reluctant to put himself back out there romantically is due to that longing trauma of losing his wife, becoming a widower. This adds a layer of sympathy to a character within the first few minutes, one that may be relatable to those who have lost their husbands or wives in the past, and that his reluctance to head into another relationship is based upon his grief and dedication to his deceased wife. It's dramatic and emotional, albeit maybe even excessively so. The sequence is tragic, and yet rather sugar-coated. Audition's earliest, sweetly sympathetic scenes, however, are part of Takashi Miike's grand plan to manipulate his audience. When Aoyama is encouraged by his work colleague to host an audition for potential romantic life partners, under the guise that they audition for a role in a yet-to-be-funded film, Audition delivers a drastically different tone to that established early on. The rush of women who audition for a role in a film that likely will never be produced is directed in a manner that is snappy, playful and humorous, toying with the repetition of the auditioning process from the producer's perspective, as if in the form of a dating game show. There are auditions that go smoother than others, and some auditioning actors are highlighted for unexpected skills that likely aren't necessary for the film the producers are supposedly making, but more for what the producer seeks in a partner. This is a sequence that is effective, not simply because it's funny, but because Takashi Miike is manipulating the audience with drastic misdirection. Audition is a horror film, and yet this sequence feels lifted straight from a comedy. Within the film's early sequences, the audience is made to believe that they are watching both a melodrama and a comedy. This sense of misdirection is brilliant in that it develops a false sense of security. The audience is bound to let their guard down as they appreciate Audition's lighter moments. Audience members not particularly familiar with this film may even consider whether they are watching the correct film or not. Through manipulation of genre conventions unexpected within horror, when Takashi Miike reveals the horror in this film, its impact is amplified. Audition, outside of genre convention manipulation, also provides a critical commentary against the societal pressure to find a romantic partnership. Romance and relationships are promoted throughout media as a highly sought after goal, from the hyper-heterosexual romanticization found within classic Disney films, to marketing campaigns that aim to portray a relationship as peak happiness and joy, reluctant to portray the actual arguments and hardships at the centre of maintaining a relationship. Takashi Miike's Audition acknowledges that there is this pressure to seek romance, and he aims to criticize it, demonstrating that to rush into a relationship with someone can be dangerous, even deadly. This societal pressure is placed on Aoyama during multiple scenes within Audition. His son asks him why doesn't he remarry. Aoyama's son is even playfully championed when he brings a girl back home, becoming that step closer to the peak happiness of romance. Even Aoyama's housekeeper suggests that a man must have a woman in his life, implying that a relationship is essential to living. With these thoughts motivating Aoyama to seek a new partner 7 years later after his wife's passing, when he finally meets a woman he feels a connection to, he rushes headfirst into uncertainty and challenges that could be avoided needed if one were to enter a relationship at a steadier pace, acknowledging the red flags when they arise. As stated in Raphael Bob Waxberg's BoJack Horseman, when you look at someone with rose-coloured glasses, all the red flags look just like flags. Aoyama's new partner, Asami, is a peculiar person. During her audition, she informs Aoyama that she is represented by Mr. Shibata of Ace Records, and yet Mr. Shibata went missing 18 months prior. She suggests that she works within her friend's bar, but the bar is closed. Asami is an enigma dressed beautifully in all white, a suspicious detail, but difficult to discern why so early on in the film, as if the white's connotation to an angelic nature is ironic, as if Asami wishes to give the impression of a pure soul when she is hiding something else. As Aoyama is besotted by Asami wearing his metaphorical rose-coloured glasses, he isn't aware of the red flags early on, and is eager to move forward into a relationship with this woman he knows very little about. The film itself is even eager to convince the audience that Asami is pure at heart. During their earliest dinner dates, Asami is portrayed as tender-natured, sweetly and softly spoken, and the choice of gentle romanticised music suggests a sense of true romance. That whatever happens, Aoyama and Asami have found love for each other, and everything shall end in sunshine, happiness, puppies and roses. This is another example of Miike's manipulation of the audience, luring the viewer into the false sense of security, but at this point the audience likely can sense something is amiss, having been given information regarding Asami that just does not make sense. How can Asami be represented professionally by an agent who has been missing for 18 months? An observant viewer is aware that something isn't right here, and Takashi Miike knows this, gradually drip-feeding the viewer glimpses into the horrors that are soon to come, via foreshadowing. Asami waiting beside her telephone as a suspicious sack lies on the floor, until it seems to burst into life. Aoyama's thoughts and dreams of Asami seem to be subconsciously warning him. Audition is now gradually implementing elements of the psychological horror that is expected from a film of this reputation, but even then, the audience is encouraged to work at piecing this narrative together, a narrative that eventually fractures into a non-linear investigation into an enigmatic woman who is not quite who she claims to be, dipping into the subconscious concerns Aoyama has about his relationship, and potentially supernatural worries of his deceased wife, who warns Aoyama to marry anybody else but not Asami, not this girl. Takashi Miike knows exactly what he's doing with the paths he leads his audience down, allowing the film's climactic sequence to pummel the audience into a shared experience of suffering, after establishing in earlier scenes that Audition could have been a potential comedy, a potential melodrama, a potential investigation, a potential romantic drama. Audition aims to be almost anything until it is undeniably one thing only, a brutal, critical horror film on the overly desperate pursuit for romance. In conclusion, Takashi Miike's Audition is a brilliant Japanese horror film due to the extent it manipulates the audience into a false sense of security, utilizing familiar genre conventions to misdirect the viewer from the film's gradual extreme horror. Audition is also a critical commentary on the over-reliance and dependency on romantic relationships encouraged by wider society, an over-reliance that protagonist Aoyama himself struggles to resist, inventive in its twists and turns, and focusing on an alluring enigma that reveals all its grotesque violations and violent tendencies by the end. Audition is one of those films where it is necessary to go into the film as blindly as possible, but even on repeated viewings, it's impossible to lessen Audition's terrifying impact.